We are live and ready to go.
All right. Everybody got it?
Got it.
All right. Welcome everybody to Ritenour's Thursday, November the 3rd Board Superintendent Work Session starting at 7 p.m. We are going to move right into the reports, 2.01, President's Reports. Everybody get your calendar out, your iCal, whatever you have, because we got some important dates coming up. We have November the 8th, Election Day, Professional Development. There is no school on this day for pre-K through 12. November the 10th, we have our Board of Education business meeting at 7 p.m. in the boardroom at the Admin Center. And then before you know it, it is going to be Thanksgiving holiday from November 23rd to November 25th with no school pre-K through 12. On December the 1st, we will have our school board candidate information session at 6 p.m. in the boardroom. Also on December 1st, we will have our board superintendent work session, 7 p.m. in the boardroom. On December the 8th, Board of Education business meeting at 7 p.m. in the boardroom at the Admin Center. If you got all that interesting information and dates that are coming up, we're going to move right on into 2.02 construction update with Mr. Michael Smith, Director of Operations, and Dwight Lindhorst, Chief Financial Officer.
You're muted, Mike.
Sorry, my first time on Zoom. All right. Of course, well-maintained facilities help to reach the district mission and vision. And our facilities should provide the best physical environment for learning to occur. And all district schools should provide consistent and equitable environments. In this update, I will be sharing an update on the fitness center and Ritenour High School Cafe HVAC equipment that is needed for the project we have planned for that space. And Dwight is going to be covering the fitness center exercise equipment update. So we have provided a request for pricing that's been advertised and the construction documents have been released for the new fitness center and cafeteria upgrades at the high school. Bids are going to be received later this month. And we will be bringing an update to the board on December 3rd and a recommendation on December 10th, where we will select and recommend a general contractor to complete this work. In order to get a little bit of a head start, we wish to purchase the HVAC equipment right away in order to avoid potential issues with lead times. We know that that has been an issue over the past few years. So we want to make sure that we don't have any delays. When we select a contractor, they will then install the equipment purchase. GRP designed all of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design for the entire project for the fitness center and the cafeteria. And they've also provided a list of HVAC equipment that we need to purchase, and also the potential costs. There are 14 total units, plus 7 thermostat controls that are needed for this space. The first one up there is a DOAS. I know most people are familiar with what an RTU is, but you may not have heard what a DOAS is. This is a dedicated outdoor air system. This will actually provide all of the fresh air for the entire space that we need. So not only does it act as an RTU, but it also brings in all of the fresh air from outside, the outside air. Of course, then we also have VRV systems, the variable refrigerant volume systems, the ceiling cassettes, split systems, in order to meet the needs of each specific area that is being renovated in the fitness center and cafeteria spaces. Of course, you know that there's already HVAC equipment on order that we're still waiting for the cafeteria itself. Once those arrive, of course, we will want to get those installed as well. So for the 14 total units, the estimated cost is $216,456. And on December 10th, I'll be making a recommendation to the Board of Education for the purchase of that equipment.
Mike, that cost has been finalized now.
That is correct. That is correct. Right.
So I'll move into the fitness center equipment. This, again, to remind you, is the design. This is the design from Advanced Exercise Equipment. Again, the smaller area would be the cardio area. That equipment was already approved by the board. And then the rest of the equipment throughout the large open space. If you can go to the next slide. That's the rubberized and turf flooring that would be installed. The installation is included in this cost. And then all of the weightlifting and exercise equipment. So again, we'll have customized Ritenour branding on the equipment. Includes all the half racks, benches, free weights and mirrors, and all the needed accessories. And so the remaining balance is $313,900. And so again, next week, I'll be recommending the board approve the purchase of the remaining equipment. Next slide, please. Again, from Advanced Exercise Fitness Solutions, I'm sorry. And again, this pricing is through a Sourcewell purchasing contract. It's a national purchasing contract. The Drew Lonis and Lee Laskowski, along with others, they talked to several different sources and like this Advanced Exercise Fitness Solutions. And then it's on a purchasing contract already, and therefore it's not necessary to bid it. So Mike and I can answer any questions you have on these two items.
What's the lead time on all this equipment?
The bad lead time was going to be the cardio, which is why we brought it to you a couple months ago. That's what they were worried about. This lead time they're not concerned with, but it'll certainly be here in plenty of time for the opening.
Well,
that holds true for the HVAC equipment as well. Ordering it now, we predicted it would get here in the summertime.
Will we have to store a lot of this somewhere till the room is ready?
No, both of those will, based on the purchase that we're doing, the manufacturer, the supplier will have to store that because they know we don't have any space to store it.
Okay.
And the subcontractor that is selected for the project, they're going to want it that way as well. This is all being ordered through TMI, and TMI, they're a company that we've done business with quite a bit, and so they would actually hold that equipment until it's ready for installation.
Better them than us.
Correct.
Yes.
If the board would approve the package, Mike Dwight, can you talk about when the work would be done and what a potential grand opening would be?
So go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I did a walkthrough. I've done several walkthroughs, but another walkthrough this afternoon. Of course, we want to get a head start once we select a general contractor on as much as we can. That's not going to disrupt a learning. That's not going to disrupt the function of the school. to a great extent. We want to get a head start on as much of that as possible. Things that would obviously need to wait until the summer would be work within the cafeteria, but work inside of that new fitness center area. That's a blank slate right now. They'd be able to get started on that pretty much right away if they select to.
So the fitness center, we plan on having a grand opening Black and Orange Day next summer on the fitness center. The cafeteria will be longer. It could be 9 to 12 months in total construction. And so we'll be working with Dr. Haywood and her administrative team on timing of those cafeteria renovations and how to schedule that. But we'll be getting most of they'll be getting most of the work, or as much of the work as possible, over the summer, of course. We will have a small addition on that, and so hopefully they can start on foundations and footings sometime this spring, maybe spring break.
Possibly even sooner.
Depends on how quiet they can be and non-disruptive to school and instruction.
Correct.
I had one question about the maintenance with the HVAC. Is that something that we're responsible for? Or is that something that the companies installing will be in charge of? I mean, I don't know what's all involved with filters, or, if it's a yearly check before, basically whenever, you're getting ready for summer, you want to make sure to have it checked sometime in March before you start turning everything on. So I was just curious about that.
Yeah. Once it's installed, maintenance becomes our responsibility.
But there is a warranty, of course.
Of course.
All right. Does anybody have any other questions? Everybody
Well,
good?
all sounds good.
Taking a look. It looks like everybody looks pretty good. And Dr. Kilbride, I tried to message you, but Rob is having a problem coming in with a host, so I'm not sure who.
He's in now.
He
I
is.
finally got in.
Yay! I wanted to make sure that you could join us. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. All
So one
right.
question I wanted to ask real quick,
Yes.
White, we're in our budget that we had planned for everything.
Yes, overall, we're fine.
Okay, thank you. I always like to check.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I did have one quick question. Did the plans for the cafeteria, I'm assuming those have not been finalized yet? What that layout looks like, how you provided us a picture of what the layout looks like for the fitness center?
Oh, yes. I mean, those construction documents are out on the street now. So yes, it was finalized. We can bring those if the board wants some.
That'd be great if they haven't already been shared. I was thinking maybe they were shared and I missed that.
No, I don't believe we did share them.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll actually have a pretty detailed renderings very soon from the furniture company that was selected, because the new furniture that is going to be installed in the cafeteria, they are able to take the drawings, the existing drawings and maps of the space, and then turn that into a pretty detailed rendering of what we expect the space to look like. So I should be getting that early December. So I'll be able to include that in the update in December.
So we'll shoot for the work session in December. I mean, not shoot for it. We'll provide it at the work session in December.
I think we'll
Okay.
all be looking
Thank you.
forward to that. Anybody have any other questions? If everybody's okay, thank you so much for your hard work on that. And we will
You-
move to 2.03, Contracted custodial service update, Mr. Michael Smith. So don't go far.
Okay. All right, so of course, clean spaces to learn and teach are important for student success. And again, and importantly, facilities should provide the best physical environment for learning to occur. All district schools should provide consistent and equitable environments. Ritenour entered into our current agreement with WFF, which is now HES Facility Services in July of 2017. And we are completing our 6th year of working with GRP. That would be complete in June of 2023.
With HES, right, Mike?
That is with HES, yes.
Okay.
Yes, WFF, HES, same company.
Okay.
Yeah. You said GRP.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. HES provides 51 employees to serve our district. Their services include general cleaning of the schools, event setup and tear down within all of the schools, special project cleaning, and of course, any other duties that we need them to accomplish. There have been improvements over the past year, especially in the form of communication between Ritenour and the custodial leaders. We have very strong communication. It was strong before. I feel it's stronger now. The starting hourly wage for HES employees increased to $15 an hour. And that was at the request of the Board of Education. And would like to thank you for that because it has made a tremendous difference. Because of that, HES is now fully staffed. It's the first time in 3 years. They've been fully staffed for quite some time now. And that is largely in part to the wage that was agreed to. Service at the elementary and middle school levels has shown improvement. HES works with Ritenour to fill vacancies and absences when needed. And therefore that is a very important service that they provide. Helps because they are fully staffed. And of course, the Ritenour evening custodial supervisor has improved accountability in the evening time as well. So again, thank you to the Board of Education for providing that for us. Though there have been improvements, we do recognize that there's improvement that's still needed. Overall, the cleanliness is not up to our standards and still needs to improve. That is true for Ritenour as well as HES employees. We need improvement of both of those groups. And then cleaning at the high school, we recognize is an ongoing struggle. It's our largest school, therefore it's the most difficult to maintain. HES improvements in staffing are welcome, of course, but that also provides a challenge because then they have a lot of new employees to train. And so you have a lot of inexperienced employees now that require that professional development. Ritenour actually has several vacancies. HES covers those vacancies, but that also spreads them thin as well. We are working very hard to fill the vacancies in Ritenour, but those have been very difficult to fill. And the hybrid system that was developed, where we have a Ritenour coordinator, custodial coordinator in each building, that continues to be a challenge. It can be difficult for some people to step up in those leadership roles. And so we're still working with our Ritenour coordinators on becoming better at what they do. So next steps, continuing to move forward. First and foremost, Ritenour needs to become fully staffed. I made a recommendation to Human Resources earlier this week for 3 employees, hoping to make a recommendation for a 4th. And so I would expect those recommendations to come to the Board of Education next week. Important that we, as a district, be fully staffed as well in order to meet our goals. HES needs to maintain their current staffing levels, and actually their goal is actually to become overstaffed, so that when they have absences, they have people to fill in. And also, as people leave, there's somebody already there and trained, ready to go for positions that become open. Ongoing training for Ritenour and HES is essential, especially because there's so many new employees within the district.
Hey,
We
Mike.
have a new restroom cleaning system that's in place that has been making a big difference. But there needs to be a greater coordination with that cleaning system, because it actually has to travel building to building and restroom to restroom. It's called a KIVAC system. It does a terrific job cleaning restrooms, but coordinating that to get into the different buildings is something.
Dr. Thomas, you have a question?
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Do our custodians and HES custodians train as a total group? Do we bring the two groups together?
Yeah, that's one thing that HES, has been great about throughout this, because they have, the majority of the staff in the custodial department. They often provide whole group professional development. And so, again, that needs to, we need more of that, because once or twice, as a big group is really tough to do, because it is such a large group. But we do bring them together to do professional development as much as possible. That needs to improve though, Brad.
Well, I was kind of hoping as we brought them together and get training that they could maybe gel and come together as a group as they get to know each other and everything. Yeah,
absolutely. It's really important because, I care for the employees very, very much. And, they're such hard workers, and they have a lot of improvement to make. We know that, but they also don't get a lot of recognition, because it's the things that are missed are the things that get recognized. It's not the good work, the expected work is generally not.
Right.
And we know that's just part of the business. We know that. And so it is important to bring them all together, to gel as a group, to support one another. We are actually planning right now a whole district get together with the department right before winter break, to get everybody together, do a luncheon, do some celebrating, recognize the growth that we still need to make, but also, to recognize the hard work and thanking them for the job that they do, because, even though there's improvements to be made, we need the people to be trained and then stay on so they can continue to get better and better. And that's how we make the department stronger.
Well, I think that's great. That's a wonderful idea.
Thank you. You can move on. Thank you. So I met actually earlier this week with the senior vice president for HES, as well as the regional director of operations. Met with them. The senior vice president actually is stationed out of Houston, Texas, but he made his way up to meet with me this week. They are committed to maintaining those staffing levels that they've worked hard to achieve. Also, they're committed to that consistent service, especially at Ritenour High School, which we recognize is an area of continued need. They are committed to continuing to help staff Ritenour positions. A lot of the Ritenour positions as well, when there's an opening in Ritenour, we will take the best of the HES employees and hire them as Ritenour employees, to recognize the hard work that they do, and to bring them on board, because now we know that they've been trained and they're familiar with our district and our expectations. And then, of course, One thing that we're going to start working on is providing critical thinking training to all of the custodial leaders, as well as the Ritenour coordinators, so that we can get better, not just communication, but those, the better skills in order to work with one another, in order to help one another, in order to gain that initiative to do a better and better job every day. And then there's a cost breakdown of what we're currently paying per month. This is what was agreed to last year. Last year, when we entered into this one-year agreement, there was no increase to the overhead and profit. The only increase was due to wages, but no increase due to overhead and profit. And then you'll remember that this coming January, there is always a union raise, a union increase that comes every January, and HES, Ritenour, and the union work together to make sure that union increase will not occur this coming January, because of the large raise that was actually given to get everybody up to a minimum of $15 an hour.
Did everyone get a good raise? Were there anyone that was left out of that raise?
No, everybody was very, very happy with that increase. Nobody was left out, Brad.
All right.
And that's all I have if there's questions.
So
Board mem-
I do have a question. Sorry, Chris, Dr. Kilbride, do you want to go?
No, go ahead, Jennifer. I'll follow up later.
Okay. So you've pointed out, and we know that we've had issues with keeping our buildings clean, keeping our classrooms clean. We see that it's a struggle, and we have some unhappy staff and I guess kids, students out there too. And we've kind of year after year said, we'll give them another shot. We'll give them another shot. And I think that you guys are putting in some good steps. But we really need to make sure that we're following up and we're holding them to it. We hired all these Ritenour coordinators so that these things would not be missed, and they're still being missed. I mean, I've seen piles being swept up the days after. So I feel like it's on the responsibility of our coordinators to say, this is not acceptable, and to make people redo the work that is being done. I don't know what else we can do. Or I guess my question is have we thought outside the box of any other options? Have we talked to other school districts to see what they may be doing? Because I know that, we're not the only ones. Just kind of thinking outside the box on a way to get better, because I feel like we've been dealing with this for a long time.
Yeah, matter of fact, when you say talk to other districts, I've spoken to quite a few people that are in my position in other districts, and they are in the same boat as us. Many of them are in worse situations than Ritenour is, especially when it comes to staffing. I do believe that the $15 an hour minimum for all employees in HES and Ritenour has made a big difference in that. I've talked to districts that, within their custodial staff, they're larger districts, but they're short 50 and 60 people within their departments. I talked to, same way with maintenance. We're not discussing maintenance right now, but it's the same way in the maintenance positions. But other districts are also suffering with that. I know several people within other cleaning companies, and they also are struggling when it comes to staffing, which is what makes me happy to see that we're doing better with staffing. other companies really struggle with that. And, you know, the quality of work is something that all of the schools and other companies continue to work with and be frustrated with, you know, and we are frustrated, you know, but it's common throughout the industry right now, because even at $15 an hour, there's still people that just don't want those jobs. You know, I talked to many highly qualified people, you know, that when I told them what the wages are to be even a Ritenour employee, they just turned it down and said no. You know, because there's it's just out there, and you know, it's hard work for little recognition. You know, the pay is much better, but even I think industry wide people are being very selective of the jobs that they're choosing.
Yeah.
Would you agree, Mike, that it's unique that we have the openings are right now on the Ritenour side? That's different from what it was in the past. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's very accurate, Chris. In the past, you know, Ritenour was fully staffed, and you know, HES or WFF or BG before them, they were always the, you know, the ones that were struggling to be staffed. You know, the good thing about having a contracted custodial is they have a dedicated HR staff themselves and recruitment staff themselves. And so that's work that we don't have to do on our end, you know, so they are doing that legwork to get those people through the door, to get them hired. And of course, you know, to get them trained. And that's the area where we're struggling right now, is that effective training.
And I also want to say, you know, we definitely, when you said earlier, we hear the bad things. We don't always hear the good things, right? I get that and everything. And so I will say that I've heard good comments made too. So I don't want it to seem like it's all just negative and everything, but it's just, especially, you know, the cleanliness and making sure that we take pride in our stuff. And especially, we're putting a lot of money and a lot of time and work into making our schools better. And so we want to make sure that they are staying clean, and that we want people to respect them, the students to respect them also. And so just, we need to make sure that we have people that buy into that, put in and helping clean, keeping things
Agree.
clean. So
Agree, because being fully staffed is great, and it's one thing, but then
they need to
next
take
is to
pride in
become
it.
fully staffed with those people that have the initiative and the willpower, the will to do tremendous work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mike, I'm curious, whenever we have sporting events and we have an increased number of individuals, whether it's up at the high school, do we have an increased number of staff members to help clean up after that? Because I feel like a lot of times we do have all these different activities and it does produce a lot more refuse. So I was just curious.
Yeah. No, we don't necessarily have an added number. However, for instance, last Friday night's football game, you know, there were 2 Ritenour and 1 HES staff member that came in to fill in and help out, you know, during that game. Oftentimes, we will offer overtime hours, you know, but not for just a regular sporting event. So we do not have additional staff. We have to, you know, we have our regular staff, our regular work, and then we also have to make sure that we clean up after the sporting event as well. It's a challenge. And
I was just making sure that they're being supported.
correct. Yeah. And so there's not additional staff for that at the high school necessarily. There are positions available, and we call it our project team. And this is one of the areas that was just currently staffed, you know, for them to become fully staffed. in the project team, they're responsible for setups and teardowns for events, cleaning up after sporting events, helping to clean up in different schools. So I guess they would fall into that category that you're talking about, Stacy, but they're, again, they're not specific to sporting events. They're really an overall cleaning crew.
So you make
Thank you.
it's a very good point, Stacy, and I appreciate that Mike never he doesn't like to make excuses. But if you think about the high school, and which is where we have probably the most challenges, that's where any district event we hold is usually at the high school because of the lower lobby, because of the auditorium, because of the football field or whatever. And when they have extra work because of those events, they either have to work more efficiently and get everything else done if they don't have the other support, or something else is getting missed. So I think that's the main reason that the high school is the one that we have the most challenges at. But Mike and his team do everything they can to try to overcome those challenges, but it's very difficult. And Jennifer, I'll go back to your question and things about looking at other districts. Frankly, we do not have students and staff do things that other districts do. I mean, when I was a kid, and probably most of you, before we left for the day, our chairs went up on the desk or the tables. They do not do that. So if you think about how many classrooms those custodians are cleaning every day, and either they're putting 25 or so chairs up on a table before they can clean, or they're cleaning around them. Those are things that we really have to start looking at, because I think that has a huge effect on the ability to get everything as clean as possible. And if we decide that, then we'll probably get pushback on that, and so we may need support from administrators as well as board members on when we ask people to do a little more so that we can get everything cleaned properly. That may be necessary.
I think Lisa had her hand up, and then Rob.
I did have a question. Thank you for that additional detail, and in the space of understanding what that workflow looks like, Dwight and Mike. What happened to our dashboards and the classroom checklist? Because I'm hearing that the checklists, like some of them are dated back into the summer. And are we utilizing those things to go back and have those conversations surrounding accountability, or even in the training process? Because you mentioned that we're having challenges even with our coordinators and looking for areas of opportunity or of improvement. How are we utilizing these tools that were designed to kind of be those benchmarks and let us know like if there's actual improvements?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So the dashboards, so the new leadership that we have from HES, they're, on board and doing I think they're doing a fantastic job. Director of Operations has just learned how to do those dashboards. So we go, regularly into the buildings, and we are conducting walkthroughs and spot checks on the buildings. But she has just learned how to actually generate that report. And so I received the latest report earlier this week. I was asking for some more detail, but I need to get that to Chris. The checklists, that comes back to the checklists were being utilized well last year. This year, because of the large number of new employees, that's one of the training items that has not come through, is the utilization of that checklist, because we all believe that is something that is going to help people hold themselves accountable when they go into the classrooms to make sure, yes, I've done these things in order to actually write that check mark on the sheet. But you know, it's a training opportunity for us right now, a retraining opportunity because of the large number of new staff.
Yeah, well, I hope we can get to the point where that is almost a monthly thing that's done, because if it's being recognized real time that those checklists are not being done, then that's, to me, I would see that's where we could have those conversations. And I know we're saying that we're short-staffed and there's a lot of that going on, but that's the baseline, that checklist, because that's their reference point when nobody else is around and they don't know what to do. Just pick up the checklist and kind of see what you missed.
I agree with you.
I would
Yep.
think so. I'm hoping we can get back to some of those tools that were created.
Thank you.
And maybe it's because I'm new, so I'll just ask it, but why are we not having the students put chairs up? I mean, if that's an issue and it's causing extra time, not asking the teachers to have the students put the chairs up?
I don't know, Mike, can you?
Yeah, it's really been one of those things, Rob, that when I was at Marvin and I was in administration at Marvin, I tried my best to have my teachers to do that. I received pushback as a principal. Moving into this position, I've received pushback as well. When I first moved in, I tried to make it, a requirement as well. I reached out to principals and asked. I was not getting the support, and so quite frankly, it was, let's just get it done. It was a fight. So yeah, that support, in order to make that happen, it would have to be increased support from other levels as well, not just me asking, but it becoming an expectation.
This came up, to that point, this came up during one of our walkthroughs through CRATS. And so if you assume 20 students in every classroom at an elementary, there's between 23 and 27 classrooms. So if it takes between 4 and 5 minutes per classroom to take chairs off the floor and put them up on the desks, 4 minutes per classroom times 25 classrooms, that's an hour and 40 minutes of just putting chairs up on the desks. So, in the name of improvement, because when we hear concerns right now, they're mostly clustered at the high school. And so when you think about the high school that has 118 teachers and probably 130 classrooms times 4 minutes, that's a significant improvement in time. But that's a thing, like that term fidelity, it's not going to be helpful if we just have it happening in some spots and not others. So that's, around accountability, we just have to take that on to claw back some time. Because my superintendent communication forum, the NEA leadership meetings, we hear about cleanliness pretty significantly. Right now, it's pretty well clustered at Ritenour High School. So if that's a way to claw back some time, we have to get people to buy in to realize we've just got to be consistent around those chairs.
Without sounding dumb here, if we're teaching in an elementary school, by the time we get to middle school and high school, it's become a normal expectation. It shouldn't be a big deal when we get there if they're being taught in elementary schools to put your chairs up.
That's a good point.
Sounds like a no-brainer. Let's just make it happen.
I do just want to lift a couple. I think I see the logic for sure, and I'm not even pushing back. I'm just also offering another perspective of one, just to consider like the ability of children. Some children may not be able to actually lift a chair and put it on, which I think would actually contribute to that sense of community, right? And belonging to like one another, and we support one another. So if my buddy can't get it up, I'm going to help. But also just to think about like the safety of a child putting, like, I just imagine my kindergartner, and God love him, but he's like me, he's a Butterfinger. So just also want to keep that in mind, like the safety of like the really little ones. I think for the older,
yeah, it actually works better for them to stack the chairs at the end of the row, than on the desk, because if we stack chairs on the desk, then you can't wipe down the desk either,
Yeah.
So but stacking up like 4 chairs at the end of each row, even that would be helpful for custodians to get in and have the potential to do a better job.
Yeah.
And then they're, students aren't lifting them up this high, they're only lifting them up mostly waist high. So
Yeah. And I know I'm just speaking for myself, but I know my kindergartner is always excited when he gets to be the line leader, the anything. So this could be one of those added like coveted spots if you get to be the chair leader.
yeah, right.
Hey, no matter how it's done, no matter what, usually it's a group activity and the kids will help each other. And when you have the whole class doing something like that, in less than 2 and 3 minutes, it's all done. And I don't see any reason why, if it's got to come from the board, let it come from the board. We want this done. Let's do it. Let's mandate it. Let's put it out there and say, those 7 people on the board are adding to this. We want to get this done so we can help out. And I don't have any problem with that at all.
I don't think it has to come from the board, but all I meant was, I know that you guys hear from employees and from teachers, and we're just trying to balance the expectation and priority of having clean classrooms and buildings versus maybe just a little help from students and staff. So that's all. But I think Mike had a good point that we need to have a conversation with NEA and make sure that they're on board, or what do we not know? What assumptions are we making that are wrong? Or so I think we have to have a discussion first.
Hey, Dwight, not to belabor this conversation, but is there, in this discussion that you're going to follow up discussion, can you kind of maybe come up with a help us help you tip sheet? So like it's suggestions that the staff may have that they can share with their students in ways to kind of help keep a cleaner community that would also be helpful to the custodial staff, or little things at the end of the day. I know my kids have had teachers who will say, okay, now make sure you clean up your space and look around you and make sure there's no paper, anything like that. I mean, I know it seems kind of trivial, but maybe if we put it in that way, it may also be a way in which it's kind of helping create more of a community in that space, and we're all working together. And that may also show effort to the custodial staff, like here, our staff are also trying to do their part, which I know everybody is. I'm not saying nobody's not. Let me be clear, but I'm just, just to try to create that conversation around that, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just wanted to add a few things. I don't want to belabor the conversation, but some of the conversations have been had with the NEA. And I'll tell you, and Dwight and I have talked a little bit about this, but one of the teachers' concerns are they feel that many teachers, probably not all, feel that they already do lots of custodial work with their students. So like I think working with them to help brainstorm how to do that. And they specifically talk about breakfast in their classrooms in the morning and cleaning up lots of spilled milk before the school day starts. And Mike is always very responsive, and so are the custodial staff when they have those needs. So some of those conversations have been had, but I agree, it's always a good thing for kids to clean up after themselves and to work as a community, to clean up their learning space. It's going to take some conversation, I think.
Yeah, just a note on that breakfast in the classroom, not, the data is positive on breakfast in the classroom around participation rates in the morning. It's also positive in that there's not lost instructional time in students being in the cafeteria as well as traveling, but it's not overly popular by and large from teachers because it does involve kids eating in the classroom, and there are, some needs for some cleanup.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Thank you so much, Mike, for all your hard work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving to 2.04 MSIP 6 update, Dr. Bruce Green, Director of Secondary Education.
Thank you and good evening to everyone.
Good
Tonight,
evening.
good evening. I want to give you an update on MSIP 6. And of course, as we move through the slides, MSIP 6, especially this iteration of it and some changes they've made, is in line with our vision as well as our mission. And definitely it's aligned with our equity statement as they added a standard to address equity as well as access. I want to remind the board as well as everyone that's listening the importance of MSIP. There are 4 that are listed on the screen. Assure continuous improvement in all schools, promote practices that lead to healthy school systems, provide conditions essential to student learning, and to review and accredit the public school districts in Missouri as mandated by state law as well as the State Board of Education. Next slide, please. In our previous presentation, we talked about some of the key changes to MSIP 6 as compared to MSIP 5. Those changes are still in place with the exception of now attendance does have a number or a percentage attached to it to where they will be measuring that as part of the accreditation process. Also, there was an additional change, and we'll talk about it later when we look at achievement under continuous MPI to where they updated their chart because it was about a percent or a point off. I apologize, a point off as well. We're still moving forward. There are some metrics that we're beginning to look at under high school access as well as continuous improvement. And the state is still sticking with the direct certification for the student group denominator. So even though we are a CEP district or a community eligibility provision district where 100% of our students receive free meals within the school, they will look at students that are directly certified from their standpoint. Next slide, please. To remind you of the timeline, this wasn't in there before, but just want to remind you of some of the things that we discussed before. They're continuing to review and revision of MSIP 6 Comprehensive Guide, September of 2022. The last iteration that I was able to access was just changed in August of 2022. And we're keeping up with the changes that they're making. It almost seems like, I would say every other week there's a change that we have to look out for. So attending some meetings and then talking to people that are in employment groups that I'm in to make sure that I keep up on it, as well as weekly conversations with the superintendent to hear what he's hearing as well as to hear what I'm hearing so we can put our notes together to make sure that we stay ahead of this. The release is still on track for December of 2022. That will be the initial MSIP release for our APR. Growth targets will be established in the winter of 2023. There's a public meeting to finalize the MSIP 6 Comprehensive Guides, spring of 2023. So you go on the state's website, you'll notice that the guide says draft, and it says draft since they put it out there. And I believe that's so that they can continue to make the changes and then it'll be final. But every year they have a draft under MSIP 5 and then it's a final after they make sure that it's correct. And then the publish of the MSIP 6 APR with growth because growth will not be included. Move to the next slide. So when we look at the classification timeline, just want to remind everyone in 2018-19, there were 3 data. We look at 19-20 and 2021, APR was not generated and assessment data was not used for accountability in 2021 while it was not administered in 19-20. And that was mainly in part due to COVID and the some restrictions that COVID brought within our school systems across the state. Under 2021-2022, last school year, data that we will receive will serve as a baseline for accountability. Our classification, again, will not be lowered due to performance, that's statutory. And then in this year that we're in, classifications will not be lowered due to performance. It'll be 2 years of data. And then in 2023, 2024, 3 years of data, and that will be the initial MSIP 6 classification. So this is what I spoke about a few slides ago to where DESC updated their index point value, again, under MSIP 5, 4 categorical. scores below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced, to where the points that were assigned were 1 for below basic, 3 for basic, and 4 for proficient, 5 for advanced. So now, since there's a continuous MPI, the state has put in an index point value system where students that may fall, and I'll use below basic as an example, they score below basic, there's a point range between 1.0 and 2.9 that they may fall within. So as they're looking at student growth over time, student growth will be noted. In the previous presentation, that was 1.0 to 1.9. The 2.9 is the change that was made by the state. Move to the next slide, please. So an achievement update that was in the guide, only 2021 assessment data will be included. The 2022 APR, new no progress measures will be included, and APR will not use 3 years of data for calculation for 2022 status calculation. So that's because we don't have them under this cycle. Again, last school year being the baseline year, and then looking at this year and next school year to give us the 3 years. And score breakdown for growth calculations have been removed from the guide. It's listed now as to be determined, and we'll talk about the point delineation on a subsequent slide as we move forward. So there will be no scores on preliminary APR for growth, and the final APR will have growth scores included. Improvement planning update. So there are 3 parts on the improvement planning. There's the response to the standards, the culture and climate survey, which are underway with that, as well as the CSIP, and we're making some strides with that as well. So under that, each LEA, they will earn or receive an improvement planning review every 2 years. So for first cycle participants, which we are not a first cycle participant, the plan has to be uploaded by December 15, 2022. And the second cycle participants must have their plans uploaded by August 15, 2023. Not sure where we are. I'm still waiting to hear from the state when our actual CSIP is scheduled to be uploaded. I'm sure they will publish that list. So if they have, I have not seen it. Oh, next slide, please. So the response to standard update, this is just a snippet from out of the book. And I know it's small, but just with some of the questions that they are asking us to respond to when it's our turn to move forward, and the questions that are listed there. And if a bigger copy is needed, I can provide that to the superintendent so that you can see what some of those questions are. Those questions that are listed there will require a written response, and they have to be uploaded by the timeline that is designated by DESI. So we will work with identified individuals to ensure that that we meet that deadline, and that we're able to adhere to the requirements. So an example, one of the questions that is on the sheet or the slide that you all cannot see is under leadership, describe the local board and superintendent's chief executive officer's professional learning experiences in your LEA. Share how these practices have enhanced your system of governance. So something that we could definitely answer and upload, but it does require us to really sit back and put pen to paper and think about some of the things that we've done over the years to ensure that we meet the requirements as well as the rubric that has been established. And there are other questions for the other standards that are listed there, whether it's database decision making, equity, and access. There are questions that are listed there. Culture and climate survey update, which is the next slide. The state has indicated our survey is already out. It's already been administered. Districts can administer a locally developed survey, a survey purchased through a vendor or DESI developed survey. The only catch is we have to include, and we did include, those 3 statements that are at the bottom. The school system ensures student voices are heard and respected. And it's in the questioning, not necessarily the statement, but questions centered around that. And the school system provides school culture and climate data and reports periodically to all stakeholders and educator teams to address positive classroom learning environments. So definitely pleased that we're underway with that. Another change to the guide is DESI added a CSIP pre-planning guide. It's Appendix G in the document, and all districts are expected to complete the pre-planning guide. So the rubrics for scoring have been replaced by 3 to 4 met or not met for each of the 5 standards, and each indicator will be 6 points with a total of 30 points awarded for that component. And districts must meet a majority of the statements for each indicator to earn all 6, to earn points for that indicator. Next slide.
And Dr. Green, is it accurate that the pre-planning guide came out late in the process, many cases after CSIPs were completed? Is that accurate?
That is accurate. That's why I smiled a little bit when I said it's because, as districts start planning, we don't start planning for the year that we're in unless, we have a hiccup. CSIP planning usually happens toward the end of your previous year, going into the summer, and then you look at data, you make shifts along the way. But now it's okay, pre-planning guide, who were the people that were at the table? What did you do? Budget, all of that stuff. So that's included in that. So yes, sir, to your point, it was after we did our work with the CSIP, with our building leaders, as well as our central office leaders. Next slide, please. Success Ready update. So there's a performance calculation with Success Ready. It will be based on 2 areas, and it's 20 points for K-12 districts. We're looking at CCR assessments. We already have data on that, similar to what we had on the MSIP 5, ACT, SAT, ASVAB, Acuplacer, things of that sort. And then our advanced courses, we're looking at AP, PLTW, IB, IRCs, and dual enrollment as well. DESE removed some of the areas from the Success Ready continuous improvement measures, so now there are only 3. School entry readiness, and then K through 12 regular attendance. Remember the last time we met, we talked about attendance not being used as a measure for accreditation, but now K through 12 attendance is in there. And then also the ICAP completion, ensuring that those 4-year plans are complete for our students as they progress to the high school. Next slide, please. They also added a section describing how districts can earn 2 points, similar to MSIP 5, for expanding their career and technical education opportunities. Then they listed, which is worth points as well, required documentation for continuous improvement. So it's the annual audit report that will have to be uploaded by December 31st, annual secretary of the board report submitted by August 15th, and our required MOSTs or core data collections, those cycles that we go through, those collections must be submitted by the due date of the associated collection cycle. So in the past, if you were late, you would get an email and it didn't go toward accreditation. You get an email and then you got it in. Now, if it's not in by a certain time, by the deadline date, then that could impact points for accreditation. Next slide, please. So there are 2 parts to break down, 140 points under performance, 60 points under continuous improvement. Again, those are the areas there for our performance scores. Those 5 areas that are listed: achievement status, achievement growth, success ready, graduation rating, graduation or graduate follow-up, which is something that we do very well on with the graduate follow-up, and then continuous improvement measures, improvement planning, instant required documentation, as well as success ready. Next slide, please. So your breakdown is as follows. And under academic achievement, I just pushed 48% so I can get the 70 up there, but this is really 24% because the growth component is to be determined. So there's 24% kind of dangling out there under the 70%. We're just waiting to hear from the state. I'm certain that there will be some statistical measure that they will use as they look at calculations for APR. But as it stands, achievement in student groups will be 24% and not 48%. The growth component that was there was the other 24%. So we just moved that up. Nothing else changed on this component other than what I just mentioned. Still 10, 10, and 2 for those roles that are listed on the screen, giving us a total of 70%. But now it's 140 points versus 70 points, which it was before. And then on this slide here, continuous improvement score. Under that, that's your improvement plan. Under this, and no, we're using Adobe. But under this here, there is 15 points for your improvement, 15% for your improvement plan. And then the other 3% will be ensuring that the audit is done, the annual secretary of the board report is complete, and then our collection cycles are entered on time. So that'll give us the 18%. Response to standards is still the same. Culture and climate survey is still the same. And then our success ready teaching and learning with 6% is still the same, giving us the 30%. So what are our next steps? Our next steps are to review data points that are made available through DESE secure portal to ensure accuracy. So there was a question earlier that was about how are we doing with MSIP6. So there is some data that's already been made available to us, and we're digging into that data as it relates to graduates. We're looking at the graduate follow-up data that has been provided, CCR data, as well as attendance. We have made some changes due to us being able to compare our data with things that are out there on the DESE website. And to that end, we've seen some increases in some of the percentages that we have. And just looked at it again today. We went up by 0.6, Dr. Kilbride. So it was 8%. Now we went up by 0.6, just to put that in your ear. So we're still making some moves to ensure that, one, that our data is accurate, and then two, learning from, well, how did it get this way? What do we need to do? How do we clean this up? How do we scrub our data, not at the end of the year, but scrub it on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis so that we're not 4 years out trying to figure out what happened to a student when they were in 9th grade, and that student should have graduated. We're continuing to review CSIPs, working through that process. In fact, our administrators met this week, and they're going to be revising their CSIPs so that it is a living document. So we'll continue to do that. Our central office leaders, their CSIP is under the new format that we're looking at using. There'll be more information about that next week, and we're continuing to review those and make modifications as needed. And the other thing is, as Dr. Kilbride and I continue to look at Appendix H, which is those identified standards, we'll begin working with identified colleagues to draft responses to those standards so that when our term comes up, we have a framework, if you would, that we can go from and make any tweaks and modifications as needed along the way. So this concludes the report that I have for you this evening on updates to MSIP6. I'll answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Going back to slide 16, I have figured out a lot of our abbreviations, but I do not know IRC.
Industry recognized credential, that typically comes under our career and technical ed component, where students can gain those credentialing through a series of battery of tests or assessments. So it's one, for plumbing, and one for food safety, things of that sort.
So, Dr. Green, these questions around looking at our documentation, looking at our compliance, looking at our continuous improvement process, can you share with the board, how is that captured? What does that look like? Because that's not performance related. What's the structure that DESE's set up where districts have to show what they've done?
So what DESE, excuse me, the structure that they set up is there will be uploads, if I understand the question correctly, where districts will, for those that require the written response, we will have to upload those to their portal. Is that the question you're asking me, Dr. Kilbride?
Yeah, and if you can just talk about the connection to prior versions of MSIP also, we're kind of going back to 3 and 4.
Yes, sir. So the good thing is we have all this wonderful technology. So back under previous cycles, I guess MSIP 2, MSIP 3-ish, somewhere around there. I don't know if you all remember, but as I said before, there used to be a time where you had all these banker boxes, if you would, that were in a room, and individuals from the state or people that they've identified to come in from various districts. Some people that are on the screen probably serve on those committees. I know Julie and I participated on a couple of them together many years ago prior to coming here, but you go in and they look at the stuff that's in the banker's boxes. The banker boxes are gone. So we will upload everything into their portal, and that's how they will get the documentation that's needed. I'm sure at some point there'll still be site visits, but all paperwork, all CSIPs, audit reports will be uploaded into the portal, and they will review them from their location versus having a whole team down here.
So if we had this MSIP review right now, would we'd be at 71%.
If we had it right now, we would be at 70 to 71%. I don't think we would be at 70, 71%. No.
So we, right now, just talking, we would end up being at risk of losing our accreditation.
No.
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 So I want to take the board back to when I came into the role. Like systems are designed to create the results that they're intended to deliver. So moving from MSIP 4 to MSIP 5, in my first year in the job, the transition went from 14 points to out of 100%. We went from 11 out of 14 points under MSIP 4, MSIP 5, same people minus the superintendent, same kids, same curriculum. We went from 11 out of 14 to 53.8% of points, which put us not only provisionally accredited, but on the verge of losing accreditation. These systems, they're always designed the same. Each time they shift, districts reset. Right. So I believe that we're going to reset and our initial score is going to be quite low. We've been able to grow from 53.8. We grew that up to 88.3% of points, and it took us four years to get there. We don't know what our first APR is going to be because, as Dr. Green said, the growth calculation, which is where we're going to get all our points, it's not set yet. Also, the idea of student attendance is something that we've pushed hard on over the years. Initially, it was not going to be factored into the calculations 3.5 weeks ago. Now it is going to be factored into the calculations. So it's whatever we know, the board will know. We just don't know where we're going to be. But based on past practice, our initial rating is not going to be high.
That way we get that trial period, right?
So the way it'll go, there'll be a draft that's issued. Like there'll be the initial draft that's issued only based on status because the growth calculation is not confirmed. The growth calculation will be confirmed at some point this spring. There'll be another draft APR that's issued that factors in those growth points. And then you start from there. And that's going to establish the baseline.
And Brad, I just want to say that, for us,
I think Julie froze.
You back, Julie?
Julie there. Julie, you froze.
Never mind. I'll talk next week.
I did have one question, since we're doing this work surrounding competency-based learning, and that is also focused on showing the growth. Are we thinking that when we're designing our competency-based scales that our percentage will align with that, or that we'll be able to translate some of these scales so it's not always like having to redesign or looking at different growth metrics in the space? Is that even possible? I don't know. I'm just asking since we're already doing some work around growth.
Scales are based on standards, priority standards, and as long as we have the same priority standards, we should be fine because they'll show growth on those standards.
Okay.
And so board members would love to give a report to you with Dr. Stewart as well as Dr. Nobile. And the reason why we're holding this meeting early, we're a part of the consortium that's going to be making a recommendation for a waiver to the state that would go into place next year, where it would be moving away completely from the current MAP and the current EOC assessment in favor of a competency-based approach where students would have multiple ways to show what they know. That may or may not be a paper or pencil test. It might be students be able to share artifacts that are tied to the competencies as evidence that they are proficient. So I think it's very exciting. It would be going into effect 24, 25 if approved. And when you think about just how quick that could be, I mean, that's 2 years down the road. So, these APR systems, they're so complex and they just don't need to be, because really they should be about measuring student learning, but unfortunately they're about ranking and sorting districts.
Sounds good.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Are we all good? Thank you, Dr. Green. All right, moving to 2.05, Parents as Teachers Update, Dr. Deneen Stewart.
Hello, good evening to everyone. Just here to give you an update on the Parents as Teachers program. This is in line with our vision and mission, just ensuring that we work in partnership with our parents and our community to ensure that our students are healthy, that they're safe, and that they are ready to learn. We can go to the equity slide. Also, it's important that we continue to build those relationships with our families and that we honor their cultures, especially when we're in their homes as well. So when we think about the Parents as Teacher program, there's 3 goals for this year is really to continue to increase the number of families that participate in the PAT program. And another goal is to really define another bilingual educator. We're getting more and more families that speak another language. We want to make sure that we are supporting our families. And then also we want to work towards meeting our full allocation of $136,000. This next slide really shows the total number of visits, family visits, and it's broken down by age for children 0 to 3 and 3 to 5. You will see there were a few challenges last year as it relates to the number of visits. Would have expected a little higher number, but there were also some staffing challenges last year, just as we experienced that in our schools. Our PAT program experienced that same challenge as well. And one of them is basically they have to get trained before they start, and that was a challenge to get them trained early on. So that was that have impacted our number of visits. Good. And this next slide really breaks down the visits into low need visits and high need visits. And really there's a larger focus on the high need visits. We want to make sure that we're supporting our families. We know that we get a little bit of a higher refund or support allocation from DESE on our high need visits, but we definitely want to make sure we're supporting all of our families. So we want to make sure that we are doing that. But yes, our high need visits were much higher than the low need visits, and the low need visits were actually the virtual visits. So there were some challenges with technology as it relates to the low need visits as well. We can go to the next slide. So this is the number of screenings last year. I mean, we did have more screenings, of course, than that year before, the 2020, because there was definitely some COVID restrictions that were put in place that year 2020, but 2021 had a little more screenings in our early childhood centers, so was able to provide some support and screenings for our students. So this is a breakdown of the program data, really summarizes the data for the last several years. And you'll see that we did have more families served last year than that year before. And then it breaks down the number of total family personal visits, and then the children that were referred for an evaluation. So this is our allocation payments, and it's based on the number of visits for students. So you'll see that our allocation for this year is $136,529, which is our goal to make sure that we're supporting our families and that we will receive a little more of our allocation. So just to summarize, we will reach the maximum number of families. This is our goal. There's goal setting in the PAT program this year to really make sure that we increase the number of family for visits and screenings for our students. And then also a visit tracker was purchased for our PAT program, and it's supposed to allow for a more efficient way to track visits and to be able to print out different graphs of the visits for the PAT program. And just really want to continue to support our families with resources. And just, we know that the PAT program is very important for our school community. Are there any questions?
I do have a question. So can you give us an example of like what a low need visit is compared to a high need visit?
Yes, there's actually a criteria for low need visits. If you have low income, for high need visits, you may have a low income family. You may have a family that has had education, limited education experience, or a single parent family household. It's a list of criteria, and those are just a few. And if I think it's two, if they have two out of that list, then they're considered a high need visit.
And where is that list derived from?
From DESE.
Oh, okay.
Yes, from DESE.
That's what I figured. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay.
No, everybody all good? Anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, it's not a question. Sorry, I'm traveling. I'm driving next. But I did just want to mention that perhaps I'm glad to see some of the strategies of partnering with the local preschools. I think that's amazing. And I was also thinking about some of our families that are on the wait list for our early childhood center. That would be great, just to be proactive and reach out and start to get those families supported. So just wanted to kind of mention that. And then also if there was any strategies around partnering with government agencies like WIC programs, or and also just having some parent as teacher representatives at like during registration time, when families are coming out and registering their students, they may not know that those services are available. So just wanted to throw that out there, but thanks so much for all your work there.
Okay, thank you. We'll look at those strategies as well.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything that they need to share? Are we good? All right. Well, we'll move to 2.06 secondary math support. Dr. Deneen Stewart.
Okay. I'm actually presenting this with Dr. Green as well. We are presenting some ideas to support our students with math. If you go to the first slide. So this is right aligned with our vision and mission, just really trying to ensure that our students are achieving at higher levels and that we are supporting them so that we produce graduates that are college and career ready.
As we look at our equity statement and really lean into giving students what they need, this is definitely in line with that. So we move forward to our objective for the evening. We'll talk about the rationale and some math data that we have, implementation thoughts, research, and then how we plan on monitoring success. Tutoring plans will include looking at secondary math tutors within the school day, looking at a push-in model for students in their respective math classes on secondary level, and then exploring also an opportunity to utilize Mathnasium outside of school hours. Next slide, please.
So we really wanted to provide some data that provided a rationale on why that math support is needed. So this is just an overview of the last 4 years and the achievement in Ritenour School District for our proficient and advanced students in math. And you'll see in 2021 and 22, some gaps as it relates to the achievement in Ritenour School District versus Missouri. So we want to try to help support students to fill in those gaps in learning in math. And this is just another graph that has a breakdown of the percent proficient and advanced in math and EOC from last year, comparing Ritenour School District to Missouri. So you'll see the gaps across the grade levels for our students. And our goal is to decrease those gaps.
So one might ask why math, and we know that math is considered to be the gatekeeper course in K through 12 schooling, but then also at the collegiate level as well. Our current reality is just that, I mean, we have more than 30% of our 12th graders that are behind in credit attainment, a lot of which is mathematics. About 40% of our students at the high school level, they have a D or F in mathematics at the progress grade marking period. So we don't do something now and be more intentional about that. I am concerned that one, our students will not be prepared for high stakes testing, such as their ELCs, their MAP tests. And we know that ELC at the high school level, that's tied to funding for a number of our students, A+ funding. And then also looking at ACT, which in a lot of cases for those students that plan on going to college, that is a test where our students have not done as well as we want them to do in mathematics, which lowers their overall score, our composite score in that. So we're hoping that this 40% improves at the end of the semester. And then that as we work through other programming, that 30% of our students that are behind in credits end up back on track. Now, while we do have growth, as noted by Dr. Stewart, in mathematics on we're comparing overall to overall from last year to the year before last, about 9% growth. We have a lot of room for improvement. And we want to make sure that we are looking at accelerating learning versus remediation. We'll move to the next slide. So why high impact tutoring? Why push into the classroom? Because of research, and it really looks at understanding that tutoring interventions have a substantial positive effect on student learning, particularly high dosage tutoring. 3 or more sessions per week of required tutoring, relationship driven as well, to where students can have that same adult in that classroom with them, that know them, they built and established relationships with them. They're utilizing the formative assessments to monitor their learning and putting things in place. That adult will work with that teacher and understand our curriculum, and there's alignment to the curriculum. And again, we will provide some formalized tutoring training as well as support. I already started talking with Evelyn about it, and Ms. Gilliam, she provided me with some documentation as well as a PowerPoint that we can use if we move forward. Next slide, please. So again, just a summary, what is high impact tutoring, what is it not? When you look at some traditional forms of tutoring, students have a different tutor assigned each time, and research doesn't support that. The growth is not as high as you would want it to be. So they have a consistent tutor, it's relationship focused, it's data informed instruction, it's not homework help, which oftentimes tutoring turns into homework help, and we'll work with our tutors to ensure they understand this is a homework help. It's focused on acceleration. Students are in the classroom getting that grade level content, and that tutor is working with the students to fill those holes in their gaps, those gaps that they need so that they can move forward. And it will be regularly scheduled, a minimum of 3 times per week as needed, and not as needed.
So we really try to look at really a plan that would support different students and all of our students. Really try to think of a plan for during the school day and a plan for after the school day. And Mathnasium was an option to look at. The focus is on math. They have been around for a long time. There's like over 1,100 Mathnasium centers across the United States. I have been in contact with the owner of the Mathnasium in Creve Coeur and really talk through a lot of details as it relates to Mathnasium, how they approach the learning for students. They use manipulatives for students, really focusing in on filling those gaps for students, giving them an assessment to determine if students, what gaps are they seeing, what are the strengths that students have. And part of the hour that students spend there is on filling the gaps for students. It's problem solving. It's not just that they are just answering rote questions. And then they have opportunities to work at that grade level. So really it's the same philosophy that we use during the school day for our students as well, to try to close those gaps for students. So the next slide really shows the mission of Mathnasium, just really to empower students to achieve excellence in math. And then the next slide really is kind of a little graph on the research related to Mathnasium. It is based on research. Students' performance increases with 20 sessions or fewer. And that 90% of students saw an improvement in their school grades as well. The plan that we worked out for Mathnasium is really looking at maybe about 100 students. Thinking about the secondary level, thinking about students at the middle school and high school, supporting 30 students at each middle school and 40 students from the high school. Students would have to attend 3 times per week for an hour. The enrollment process that we would like to put in place is really selecting a randomized list of students based on the criteria. Students have to be reading at least a 3rd grade level. And then they have to follow a code of conduct at Mathnasium. And then we're thinking of reaching out to students that have maybe a C or D in their math class in the middle school and pre-algebra and algebra at the high school level to support those students that are maybe close to proficiency. And also the goal is to monitor the growth of students. Mathnasium provides a progress report, but we also can track their growth through Evaluate as well.
We look at the tutorial support during the day, the push-in, high-dose tutoring. We're looking at 10 employees with a salary to be $350,560. This doesn't include benefits. It's on the next row, with the total amount being a little over $500,000 for those 10 employees. We're looking at 4 at the high school and 3 at each middle schools. And we're working with our math coaches in both of those spaces to identify those classrooms where the push-in will be needed for our students. Next slide, please.
So really, this slide just really covers the Mathnasium cost. At the first month, there's a diagnostic that is $84.50. But actually, they will give it to us for, well, actually, normally it's $169, and they give it to us for $84.50 per student. The monthly fees for a middle school is $260 a month, and for high school, $300 a month. That will total to $201,650 for 7 months. Their monthly fees would be $36,050 for the first month that they attend. But after that, it would be $27,600 because of that one-time assessment fee of $8,450.
$84.50, right?
For 100 students.
Oh, for 100 students. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah.
For 100 students. No problem. Also, the criteria, like I stated before, students will have to follow that code of conduct. They have to be reading at least a 3rd grade level, grade a C or D in their math class at the secondary level to really support those students that may be at the cusp of proficiency. And then the parents would have to provide that transportation for students. We know that may be, a problem for maybe some parents. That's why we wanted to make sure we had a support plan that supported students during the day, and then also students after the school day as well. Students may be dropped if the code of conduct is not followed in the center, if they're not completing their work or their attendance is low. The next slide. Really, I'm not going to review it in detail, but it just describes the incentive program at Mathnasium, just to show that there is some incentive there for students to motivate them to do well. Do we have any questions? The next slide.
Where'd you say this Mathnasium place is located?
It's in Creve Coeur. Yeah, it's in Creve Coeur. That's the closest one to us.
I was curious, Dr. Stewart, in terms of if this program shows that it has benefit to it, how can we apply it with other students that are also struggling? As well as what's the next look at approach to being able to apply it to more students?
You're saying that you would like additional students perhaps to participate in the program? I guess that would be up to Dr. Kilbright and the board as far as, paying for that. But there are some limitations as it relates to staffing. I've talked to the owner at the Creve Coeur location, had to purchase some furniture, had to look at staffing. So there's some limitations and planning that has to take place. So I'm not sure about the capacity if they could even take 200 students. So that would have to be something that would have to be discussed with the owner, as well as Dr. Kilbright and the board.
In fact, the 100 students, Dr. Stewart, was the limit that the facility would accept. Is that right?
That's right, because they have to come 3 times a week, and then they want to also honor the students that are already participating in their center. So I didn't look outside of the one in Creve Coeur, but that's where we are at this point.
Is this similar to like the Sylvan learning systems?
Their focus is specifically on math, and their approach, I think, is more of a balanced approach to me. It's balanced in a sense that, there's critical thinking aspects to it. It's not just rote. I know that my child, when they went through, I'm trying to think, it was Kumon or something, it was just rote, memorization, just rote. And it was not, the application of knowledge. So I like that they are balancing that. And it is very similar to the approach that we take in our schools. They have shown me some of their assessments. Students have to be assessed. They're assessed at the beginning, a diagnostic to see their gaps in learning. So it's very similar and to the approach that we take.
Let's say we sent my oldest son to Sylvan Learning Systems, and it sounds like the same thing.
Pretty similar.
They assess him where he is.
Mm-hmm.
They could develop a plan. They follow the plan. He goes a couple times a week. There's one-on-one working. And it sounds very similar.
Yes, I think it's very similar.
Dr. Stewart, you said the criteria was the students that would have a C or a D, but then when we look at our current reality, we have about 40% of our high school students that have a D or an F. So I am assuming that for those students that may have more of the F, are we, that's where some other interventions are coming in place at the high school level to address that? Or is it just that those will be the second round that will be considered?
The goal and the plan that we kind of discussed is that the plan that Dr. Green mentioned of hiring the assistants that will be supporting students within the classroom. We were thinking that that support could come in the classroom for students. I know at the middle school level, there's after schools academic support, but it's my understanding we don't get many students that sign up for that support. So that's why we were thinking during the school day, we can impact more students during the school day, and then also have this mathnasium for families that could take advantage of that.
Okay. And then you also referenced that if the students, when they participate in mathnasium, if they don't align or comply with the code of conduct and aren't able to attend so many sessions, that they would have to be no longer participate. Right. Did mathnasium say we would have the ability to add additional students, or once the student can no longer participate, then that would just be money we paid for that space that's no longer being utilized?
Oh, no, yes, because we're paying for 100 students, so they would have to serve 100 students, but I'll make sure that terminology is very clear in their contract. I'm sure Dwight will as well.
So it's paying for the seat. Is that correct, Dr. Stewart?
100 seats, 100 students.
So are we paying for 100 seats? And if we don't fill them, then we're out that money?
No, I did ask that question to make sure that, no, we will not pay for, if we can't fill them, then we will not pay for that. Also, the criteria we set with the C's or D's, that's a criteria now. It doesn't mean that won't change. If we don't get 100 students that sign up, we may need to look at that criteria again.
So to be clear too, the code of conduct, those criteria, those are mathnasium criteria. Those are not Ritenour criteria, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Sure. I don't remember you saying it, so I wanted to make sure that everyone realizes that these supports would be ESSER 3 funded. So ESSER 3, we're required to spend at least 20% of our allocation on learning loss. And so this would be directly related. There's certain criteria, but they're research-based, but tutoring certainly is one of the things that is specifically spelled out that you can spend that on. So this would all be funded by ESSER 3 federal dollars.
And so the thinking is, you never want to put all your eggs in one basket. We don't want to put all our eggs in the tutoring basket, because if students are requiring large amounts of tutoring, that means the universal instruction is not as impactful. With your support board members, we've made significant investments in coaching up teachers, instructional coaches, facilitators, professional development. So as we have expanded tutoring supports, we're also increasing, improving universal instruction with the hope that less students are going to need tutoring in the years to come. Also, board members, just as you know, the instructional coaches that were hired that are supporting at the secondary level, a portion of their job is also high dosage tutoring, whereas they're coaching up teachers, they are also working with small groups of students in line with that definition that was a part of the presentation.
Hey, Vanessa, do you have a question?
Yes, and sorry if I missed this, but this sounds good. I just had a couple of questions around recruitment and transportation. I didn't quite catch that bit. So in terms of recruitment, how are families finding out about this, and how soon are they going to be notified to enroll or register their student?
Right, and we really want to do this right away after getting feedback from the Board of Education. We have the application ready to go through Tyler. for parents to apply. But then this criteria is on the application. So then I'll work with administration in the buildings to ensure that whoever applied, they meet that criteria. And then we talked about randomly selecting students to try to have some equitable selection of students. So that's where we are with that.
Okay. And so that brings up a couple more questions. Well, I'll keep it to one more.
That's okay.
So parents will be notified or guardians will be notified via just email, or will teachers be reaching out individually? I like the fact that the application's already in there and all of that is the logistics of that, but just the actual outreach, how will that happen?
Well, we really talked about having the application to go out via Tyler. We can definitely have teachers follow up, but we talked about doing that to ensure that we're being equitable about the process. So just making sure that that application goes out and then we randomly select students. That's the process that we discussed.
Okay, thank you. And then the transportation piece, I think I missed it. I was putting my headphones in, so I don't know if I caught it, but you were saying the parents or guardians have to have transportation. So I could see that also being an obstacle. Sorry if you did mention that, what the workaround or solution will be to that. And also if we're allowed to use some of the funds to provide for transportation or support transportation somehow.
And that's a really good question. We really talked about that in great detail because we knew that could possibly be a barrier for some of our families. But we really looked at transportation department and looked at scheduling, and it was a conflict with time with the center and the students getting there after dismissal. And it was just a conflict where students almost would have to go home for 2 hours and come back to the school. And it was just a lag time for them to get to the center. So it just became something that was a little complex. So we wanted to make sure the workaround was to ensure that we're also hiring tutors during the day to try to support students in the classroom. And then we also have this for after school. So that was kind of our workaround. And we also have homework help, at the school level as well, at the middle school for students. So, there's different options for students, and we wanted to make sure we had that. Participation is kind of low at the middle school with homework help, but these are the options that we want to make sure that we have for our students.
And I wonder if there's any way, thank you for that. I wonder if there's any way, this is just a suggestion, of somehow getting the data of who needs transportation. So is transportation a barrier? Is that an obstacle? I'm just curious to know if of the people who do register their student, how many would need transportation? And then maybe we can work through, a parent group or somebody at the high school who can help coordinate carpools or something like that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But actually having that information or having that as a checkbox of, would you need transportation? It's not, we can't offer it at the moment, but if there's a way of just kind of gathering that information, I would just be.
And that's a really good point. I know that, usually Ritenour, we don't usually coordinate necessarily parent transportation, but I did speak with the owner of Mathnasium, and he mentioned that as well, that maybe he could help with that coordination of maybe reaching out to a parent to say, are you interested in, working with this family to transport you to Mathnasium? You can come around the same time. So he mentioned that he normally does that. So that could be an option for some families as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just
Jennifer,
had
you have
a,
question.
yeah, I just had two questions. My first question, and kind of triggered off of what Vanessa said with the transportation and everything, is what time of day would they be going to Mathnasium?
They mentioned that they may have slots available around 4:15, 4:30 to get there around that time. They mentioned maybe a little bit earlier, but then we have routes, for our students, so we couldn't go any earlier than that. So there was some transportation kind of conflict with time.
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't necessarily the funding of transportation, it was the availability of transportation, because it would hit right in the middle of the afternoon tiers when we'd be running students out to Olive and 270. That was the rub.
So how, I guess, does the Mathnasium start at 4 o'clock and then it goes till 5, or is it when do they start? When do they end?
So I believe that they open around 4, but he was willing to open maybe a little bit earlier for Ritenour students. So, could have done around 3:30-ish, but we couldn't do that. So we talked about 4:30. But then, our middle schools get out around 2, and then it was just not, the timing of it wasn't working out. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But how long is the session?
It's an hour.
It's 1 hour. Okay.
Mhm.
I was concerned because we're also now, like, during the day, and parents, who have jobs that they can't get away from, they would have to find somebody to do that. And, I guess if there's a will, there's a way, right? So just kind of thinking of those pieces.
Right.
One other question I had is going back to your slide 9, and where it said more than 30% of our 12th grade students are behind in credit attainment. And I guess my question is do we know what is leading to that? Like, I guess my question is when 11th grade comes around, is it that they're not signing up for the right classes? I understand that there's also, they didn't pass a class, so they didn't get the credit, that kind of thing. But I'm just wondering, is there something we should be doing better to make sure that they're getting that?
Dr. Green, you want to speak on that?
Definitely. And a lot of the credit attainment concerns really start back in that 9th grade year.
Okay.
And so when you look at that, and when we say behind, let me back up. When we say behind, when you look at students being on track to graduate, we would like for students to pass all of their classes and earn the 7 credits per year. But we're looking at least 6 credits per school year. So that number comes from students that have less than those 18 credits at the end of their 11th grade year. When you look at the data, it really starts in that 9th grade year, and really working with individuals within the school to make sure that we're looking at those early warning indicators, such as attendance, such as that progress the student has a very low C or a D, and what type of interventions or supports are we putting in place to help those students early on. So I guess to answer the question another way, it didn't just happen when they got to 12th grade. This was 9th grade year, I fell a little behind. 10th grade year, I fell behind. We offer summer school. You don't want to go to summer school. You don't want to take advantage of other opportunities. So what else can we do to help, or what else can we do to support you? So
that 30%, that credit attainment is every class, not just math.
Let me go back to the, look at the slide to make sure there's two percentages that I had on there. Let me pull it up really fast. One of them was for math.
The 40% was for the math. The
Right.
30% is all
It's
in.
all classes, yes.
Okay. Okay. I think that explains it better because I know that we've talked about, before where we've had the problem starting in 9th grade and how do we get them early so that they don't get into that issue. So.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll say we are making great strides, and some of that will be discussed next week when we look at where we are with our graduation rate due to some programming that's been put in place with our student rebound program and our student success program. We've been able to realize some definite potential with those programs, and a number of our students, as a result of participating in both of those programs and some other credit recovery opportunities that we provided, have definitely contributed to an increase in our graduation rate.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Stewart.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Anything else you want to share? We're all good. Thank you so much, Dr. Stewart. Is there somebody else? What?
I'm sorry, Stacy.
That's okay. Lisa, go ahead.
I just have one thought. When we're talking about sending this through the Tyler portal and through the Tyler app and everything, do we think we may run into where parents are still not utilizing that in the way that they should be? I know like a registration time, there's a lot of emails that go out to say, hey, get your child registered through Tyler. So what is that going to look like, or what's the plan to address that in the event that that comes up?
Yeah, we really, another option that we had is for, really to work with administrators and, like Vanessa was saying, to have some teachers call home to, connect with the parents for them to sign up as well. We can reach out to families. I know that I could be working with Doug Bray, and we've talked about this a little bit about sending some messaging to families as well to let them know about this application as well. So we can really have a communication plan to communicate with our families if we go the Tyler application route.
Okay.
Would it not be good to start with the student and ask them, have a conversation with the student? Because if the student can't or won't do it, then the conversation's done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it might be good for the student to take the application home to the parent and say, I want to do this.
Okay.
Instead of going to the parents and saying, here's an opportunity to help your student, and the student saying, oh, wait a minute, I don't even want to do that. Maybe we should get the student on board, and then the student can get the parent on board.
That's a thought. I think, part of what we're dealing with is there are some reluctant learners, and it takes a web of support around the child that includes the teacher and the parent, and in some cases, close friends, extended family. If it were just only going to the student, painting the picture of why this is in the student's best interest, if that's all it took, that would be great. But we have to utilize the web of support around the child that if a student is not having success in math, in some cases, not all cases, they're going to be pretty hesitant to try to go and get more. So I it might be a place to start, but I think it's going to take more.
Anybody else have anything to share?
Stacy, I'm driving, so I can't pull my screen up, but I am going to say, kind of piggybacking off of what Brad just said, I guess one of my fears is the amount of money that we're talking about. If the student's not invested, as the parents say, well, you're going to go and do this, I guess I'm just fearful that they're not going to give it their all, and then we're wasting money. So does that look more of, okay, I know we don't want to go to we want to get the student, but we need to get that web of support. But do we do that by inviting both the parent and the student in together and have a conversation? I just think that we've got to get the student buy-in first, or they're not going to do the work. And that's what scares me.
There you go.
I mean, we can definitely consider another plan. I think we definitely want to make sure that students are motivated to go, because they're the ones that have to complete that work, and, you know, making sure that they're motivated for that. So we can look at the plan and talk about, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. To that point, Dr. Stewart, not to cut you off, but I think it's also about the, teacher leadership and leaders being leaders also sometimes. And again, not all students, but sometimes students don't always make the best decisions for themselves, right? And so that's where, again, it's not about forcing. It's about, creating a compelling vision about why this is the best option. So I think I agree with both Brad and Rob around forcing a student. When you're trying to force a 17 or an 18-year-old student to do something, you really can't force a 17 or 18-year-old student to do anything. So it's about, showing some leadership, painting the picture of why this is in your best interest, why it's, devote time now, so that you can get the graduate, you get your diploma and you can move on to the next step in your life and leave high school behind. I think that's where leadership and using your words are going to be absolutely critical. And I think it probably is going to involve bringing in caregivers, to your point, Rob, to work with the student about why this is in their best interest.
Anybody else have anything to share?
Nope.
I think it's a great opportunity. Look forward to see what we can do.
Yeah, so board members, thanks for your feedback. Thanks for all the
All right.
candor and engagement around that topic. Know that it's a good bit of funds, but we also know that ESSER funding, we're coming somewhat near a close, the end of 2024. Look forward to giving you a report in the future around how we've spent our ESSER funding.
Thank you.
The only thing I want to say last on that was, please understand my heart there, Dr. Kilbride, Dr. Stewart, Dr. Green. It's not that I don't want to see it done. I think it's an awesome program and an awesome way to help increase our scores and help our students along. I don't want to see us focusing on students that aren't going to take advantage of it if we've got other students that could be falling behind that we could be giving it to that want to take that advantage. That's my only concern.
Appreciate the thoughts. I do.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Dr. Stewart.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to be looking at the agenda review 3.01, proposed agenda for the regular business Board of Education meeting. Let's pop that up on the screen.
Thank you, Dr. Alpin. Yeah, so board members, we're back in person next week. We have a 7 p.m. start in the boardroom. HVAC work is complete. So, we'll be in a good climate controlled space and be able to focus on the learning for the night. We've got a school of the month. The school of the month is Marvin. So we'll have Dr. Thurman, Miss Butler, and the team from Marvin showing off some of the work that's going on there. Happy to see all of the artwork that Marvin has sent over. Mr. Kometz is the art teacher at Marvin and was just talking with Miss Clover and got up to take a look at the boardroom. Some great pieces of art that Marvin sent over that are on display there. So when we get into our reports, I'll be speaking about Marvin, and they were just recognized as a Missouri Green School for their sustainability work, for their initiatives that they have in that building to expose students to the importance of sustainable practices. And so after their School of the Month presentation, we'll be inviting Dr. Thurman, Miss Butler up to the dais to talk a little bit about that award that they had just received. Also, the SSD Governing Council report, the board may want to have a conversation. I know that Ms. Lonis is serving in that role as SSD delegate. I think there was some thinking amongst the board that the board might want to talk about that report. I know the Governing Council has not met yet, so I know that Ms. Lonis would be giving the report on the Governing Council. Also, MSBA delegate Vanessa will be down here in Kansas City. I know there's a very important MSBA delegate meeting tomorrow afternoon. The MSBA will be asking delegates to approve the legislative platform for this year. And I talked with Vanessa briefly yesterday. One of the hot topics that's in the MSBA legislative platform is supporting open enrollment across the state of Missouri, which would essentially allow students, regardless of their residence, to attend any of the 520 public school districts across the state of Missouri. There's some significant engagement around that topic. So I talked briefly with Vanessa yesterday about perhaps reaching out to some of you to get feedback and some of your thinking around whether or not open enrollment would be the right thing, not only in Missouri, but for the Ritenour community. So just wanted to share a little bit about that conversation I had with Vanessa, because she'll be a part of that conversation tomorrow at 3:45. Is that right, Vanessa?
Yes, so the pre-session is at 3:45 and then the actual session starts at 4 o'clock afterwards. So, and I've reached out to one of our district kind of coordinators here who also said they could meet with me beforehand just to make sure I'm understanding the verbiage around things. But yeah, if you all have any questions about that. And I think not sure if you all have the positions on there and specifically the one that Dr. Kilbright is talking about, but I can send the screenshot so you all can just read that over.
Thanks, Vanessa. When we get to the business items, so return to learning plan. So we did survey staff, community, and students. I'll be putting the data from the results of that survey in the Friday memo to the board tomorrow. I'll also be including the survey results in the presentation to the board next week. If you remember, the return to learning plan no longer is it the responsibility that we approve it every 30 days. I still believe it's a good idea in terms of communication to keep up with it. Just in a nutshell, the survey results did indicate support for a threshold, did also indicate support for maintaining the dashboard. In the Friday memo tomorrow, and then in open session, we'll share the quantifiable, the specific results from the survey. Dr. Green, Dr. Stewart be presenting on the CSIP plan, which we'd be seeking your approval for the year. We're in a transition period, transitioning to MSIP 6 and the format for CSIPs. And so Dr. Green will talk a bit about that next week. Ms. Hahn will be giving the annual instructional effectiveness report, which is a very important report that's delivered on a yearly basis. And connected to this effectiveness report, would like to present to the board in December an update on the progress of the competency-based learning group, the systems design zone that we're a part of. There have been 2 meetings thus far. So in December, would like to present to the board in the work session the direction that this group is moving, because it's moving very quickly. And I think after hearing the instructional effectiveness report next week, I think it would make sense in December to present the future of assessment and accreditation in Missouri, because the foundation, the vision has been laid in the first 2 meetings. As Mr. Lindhorst, Mr. Smith had presented, there's going to be a construction approval item in November. There'll also be a construction approval item in December, as we have 2 large projects coming along. I did capture that as those renderings are completed of the cafeteria, that we would get those renderings in front of the board, because right now, in terms of the project, the project is kind of the larger box or the architectural sketches. When we get the renderings done, I think that'll mean a whole lot to the board. So as soon as that's done, we'll make sure that we get those in front of the board. Personnel recommendations. So Dr. LaChance will be bringing some personnel recommendations to the board on the support staff side, working to get fully staffed so that we can address the concerns around building cleanliness and maintenance and so on. Also, just a quick update, there won't be a recommendation this month. However, we've posted for the assistant principal position at Ritenour High School. That position has closed, a number of strong candidates for that position. And then also my executive assistant and the secretary to the Board of Education, that position has closed also. So look forward to having recommendations for those positions for the board in December. The board self-eval, if you remember, last month we tabled those items. So there would be the discussion of the results of the board self-eval. Thanks to everybody for completing not only the board self-eval, but also the superintendent evaluation. So in open, there'd be the conversation about the board self-eval, and then in closed, my evaluation. And then there's always space for board member comments. On the consent agenda, by statute every year, the recommendation or the appointment for the homeless coordinator, which in Ritenour is Julie Hahn. So we'll be seeking your approval of the consent agenda. And if you approve the consent agenda, that would include approving Ms. Hahn as the homeless coordinator for the district. Ms. Hahn just got back from a conference, the federal conference around that topic, and is just a wealth of information in supporting students and families who are in transition. And also the annual summer school program evaluation, be reporting out on results as well as opportunities for next year for our planning. At this point, we have one closed session item, and I just shared it. There are no other closed session items at this point.
Okay, so I would just like to say that the safety and security program evaluation will also be on the consent agenda. I do not have it on there.
Okay. And board members, I can answer any questions you might have about the agenda for next week.
Looks pretty good.
Thank you.
Nope, we got a lot of good work looking ahead in the future.
So board members, thanks again for your flexibility for allowing this virtual meeting to take place. You know, the day-to-day, you know, the learning today, the vision, as I shared, for what not only assessment could be in Missouri, but the future of accreditation, I think is pretty compelling. So looking forward to sharing that vision with you in December.